Hey, what's going on, Posido here. Today I'm going to share with you how I learned the notes on the bass in a couple of weeks. I'm going to go over my exact approach, and I'm also going to share with you a few other tips of my own that I use to reinforce my knowledge of the fretboard. So if you're new to playing the bass, or you've been playing for quite some time but having trouble remembering the notes of the fretboard, this video is for you. Let's dive in. Okay, so there are four main steps to this approach. The first step involves learning the logic of music. The second one is learning the logic of the fretboard, then learning your octaves, and then finally applying it to everything that you play. Okay, and I'll go over each of these steps. So learning the logic of music. Music is spelled in alphabetical order. So if you know your alphabet, particularly the letters A through G, you're more than halfway there. Okay, so A, B, C, D, E, F, G, that's 7 notes. Now there's 12 notes in music, or most music. Some styles of music will have, or other cultures will have, microtones and all this stuff. So we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G. In between those notes are the sharps and flats. So A sharp, which is the same as B flat. Then we have C sharp, which is the same as D flat. D sharp, which is the same as E flat. F sharp, which is the same as G flat. And G sharp, which is the same as A flat. Okay, so that's all 12 notes right there. A through G, and then all the notes in between. Now you'll notice there's a couple notes, or a few notes where there's no sharps or flats in between, and that's E and F. So there's no E sharp or F flat in between, and the notes B and C. There's no B sharp or C flat in between, and that's what you see on a piano. So in a piano, you'll notice there's white keys, and then there's black keys in between each of these white keys. But for the notes E and F, there's no black key in between. And for B and C, there's no black key in between. Okay, so that logic is important. And so those two things are important: alphabetical order, and those notes E and F and B and C don't have a half step in between. The reason why that's important is because, for instance, on the bass, if I play a G here, okay, this is a G on this third fret, I already know a whole step up is A, because I'm going in alphabetical order: G, A, B. Okay, I know what is around it. If I go the other direction, I know this is F. Just by knowing the logic, you don't have to be memorizing your notes so much. If anything, you just have to know a few notes, get comfortable with a few notes, and then you already know what the surrounding notes are based on just the alphabet. Okay, so that's the logic of music: alphabetical order, and no half steps in between E and F, no half steps in between B and C. Everything else is just whole steps. Now, let's talk about the logic of the fretboard. The fretboard, similar to a piano, each of these frets are half steps. Okay, so if we take now some of the logic of music that we just learned and apply it to the fretboard, okay, I know my lowest note on the bass is E. Actually, let me just go over that really quick. The strings that you have on the bass, from high to low, we have G, D, A, E, okay, in standard tuning, okay, or the other way around, E, A, D, G. Okay, so listening to your note E, knowing that on a piano there's no half step between E and F, I already know this next fret is an F, okay, so this is F. Now let's say we just stay focused on this E string, okay. Just like the piano, everything is going to be a whole step, just spelling the regular letters of the alphabet. So a whole step above that is G, so this is G. Whole step above that is A. Whole step above that is B. And B is one of those notes where I know there's no step in between B and C, so I go up a half step, and I have C. Now I'm back to whole steps again, D, and then I'm back to E again, okay? And then just like the alphabet, everything is just going to continually repeat again once you get to the same note. Okay, so A through A, B through B, C through C, D through D. It all just repeats again. So in E, and I'm just going to stay on just, for instance, if these were white keys on the piano, I have E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. And that all repeats itself. That's the logic of the fretboard. And that's going to be the same thing on every single string, every fret, just like a piano. Okay, so if I go to A, okay, after A, the next letter is B, so I go up a whole step, I have B. B is one of those notes where there's no half step in between, so B, the next note is C. Then I know it's whole steps from there. D, E, oh, back to E again. Half step, that's F, G, A, and everything repeats again. Okay, that's going to be the same thing for D again. D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, that repeats. And G, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay. Start getting comfortable, or get yourself comfortable first with these natural notes, so to speak, the white keys on the piano. These are going to be what I would call like anchors or landmarks on your fretboard. Okay, so for instance, I already know where C is. Okay, by knowing where C is, I already know where B and D are. You know, B is a half step below, D is a whole step up. These are all landmarks. If I know where G is, for instance, I already know where F is. I already know where A is. Okay. The next thing is, once you get comfortable with all those, we want to start to know where all our octaves are on the bass. Octaves are going to be crucial because just like how you learn some landmarks with your natural keys or your natural notes, when you know the octaves, that's going to expand your range now of the notes that you know on your fretboard. Okay, so I just learned an octave just right now. I know that I just learned that when I get to the 12th fret, everything repeats itself. Okay, so that's an octave. Okay, so 12th fret is an octave. But here's some other octaves that are really good to know. Okay, so let's look at the note C. Okay, I'm going to go 2 frets up and across 2 strings. That's an octave, a perfect octave. So it's double the frequency, it's higher in note, in pitch. Okay, so that's 1 octave. That shape works everywhere on the bass, no matter what note. So if I want to find the octave of, let's say, E, here's E right here. I already know the octave is here. I know here E, I know there. Once I know the octaves, I already know my surrounding notes. Just like I talked about earlier, the logic of the fretboard, the logic of music, just it's all in alphabetical order. So for instance, let's say go back to the note C. Okay, if I wanted to know D flat, remember D is only a whole step away. D flat has to be a half step above it. There's D flat. There's D flat right there. Okay, so that's the logic of the fretboard in general. Everything repeats. Once you get the hang of doing octaves, this is where it really will kick into gear, where you'll really start to learn and remember, and actually start remembering the notes. You're not really memorizing. I didn't sit here and actually memorize each fret. Actually, I feel that's very inefficient. The next thing to do is to apply what you just learned. Okay, so you have the logic of music and the logic of the fretboard. Now we start an octaves. We start applying that to our bass lines. Okay, so what I would do is when I would be at a jam session or I'd be jamming with a band or practicing on my own, if I'm playing like a bass line, I'm going to just, as I'm playing in time, I'm going to look for an octave, for instance, and then I'm just going to go for it. Okay, so that right there is already challenging me to really start venturing out into different parts of my fretboard. Okay, so here's a few other things that are going to help reinforce your knowledge of the fretboard. The first thing that I really like to do is to transcribe lines that use a wide range, or that have a wide melodic range. Okay, so instead of transcribing bass lines all the time, I'll transcribe a lot of horn lines. A lot of horns, like saxophones and trumpets, will use a lot of arpeggios. And that's going to help you get comfortable just moving up and down your fretboard without having to think about it. It really helps to challenge yourself to do things that you're uncomfortable with. So, and transcribing is one of those things that can easily put you in an uncomfortable zone. So, I recommend that highly. Another thing that will really help is to say your notes out loud as you're practicing. Now, you don't have to do this every single time, but it does help to do this. So for instance, if we were looking at, all the natural notes in your fretboard, say it as you're playing, and the key is to aim for accuracy, not speed. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate that. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, remember, just alphabetical order, and follow the logic of the musical notes. No half steps in between E and F, no half steps between B and C. Once you get comfortable with all this stuff, then you can really start throwing in, like the flat or sharp keys and stuff like that. And actually, nothing changes once you understand the logic of the fretboard. If I'm playing in G flat, nothing changes. That's the same thing. I didn't have to think about it. It's the same thing as if I was playing, a G major scale. Fingerings all stay the same. I actually don't even really think about fingerings too much. If anything, I think more whole steps and half steps, and the relationship between, certain notes. So those are really the things that are really going to help you with learning your fretboard. You got to know the logic of music. You got to know the logic of your fretboard, and challenge yourself to really stretch yourself to learn all the octaves on your fretboard. That's gonna force you to venture out on your fretboard. Now, the sooner you can start applying that to your music, to your bass lines, that's gonna really accelerate your learning here. And the thing is, when you're practicing, don't worry about what other people are thinking. So just because you're jumping around octaves, yes, it's not gonna sound, it's not gonna sound tasteful. That's not the point. If you're aiming for learning your fretboard, just start reaching for notes. You can think about it as you're playing and then aim for it. But keep the time. That's going to be important. Music, happens in time. You don't want to be constantly stopping, thinking, and then playing the note. Try to practice doing this stuff while you're keeping time. All right, so that's all I got for you today. If you like what you heard today, or if you learned something today, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.